When it comes to mysteries of the past, perhaps nothing catches more attention than the UFO phenomenon. Unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, have been documented since the days of the ancient Egyptians. And nowadays, it seems like we're always hearing about UFO sightings, with the US government even releasing documents on their findings in recent years. In this video, we will look at the history of documented UFO sightings and try to answer the question, just what the heck is going on up there? It's best to start at the beginning, maybe. The first documented sighting, the Tulli Papyrus, is said to be an ancient Egyptian record dating back to around 1440 BCE during the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose III of the 18th dynasty. The text allegedly describes multiple sightings of fiery discs, or circles of fire, appearing in the sky over Egypt. The imagery this description brings is striking, and many ufologists, and yes, that is a real thing, I Googled it and Google never lies, cite this as evidence that UFO encounters may have occurred across human history, not just in modern times. Before going further, let's analyze the passage in question. In the year 22 of the third month of winter, 6th hour of the day, the scribes of the House of Life noticed a circle of fire coming from the sky. It had no head and its mouth emitted a foul breath. Its body was 1 rod in length and 1 rod in width. It had no voice. The scribes were confused and frightened, and they threw themselves flat on their bellies. After several days, these things became more numerous in the sky than ever. They shone in the sky more than the brightness of the sun and extended to the limits of the heavens. Then they ascended higher into the sky and disappeared. Fish and other volatiles rained down from the sky. It seems convincing. What else could this be? There's no way we can logically explain this without bringing in UFOs, but more specifically, objects from other worlds. But the problem of this data lies at the source. We must ask, where did the papyrus come from? The story first appeared in the 1930s and 40s when Alberto Tulli, director of the Vatican Museum's Egyptian section, reportedly discovered a damaged papyrus in an antique shop in Cairo. Since he couldn't afford it, he allegedly copied the text and later translated it with the help of Boris de Rothschilds, a well-known Egyptologist and mysticist. The original papyrus has never been verified or located. Only Tulli's alleged copy exists in translated form. It goes without saying, this whole story raises at least one eyebrow. Most modern mainstream Egyptologists are very skeptical of the Tulli Papyrus for several reasons. The original document has never been found or studied. The grammar and structure seem inconsistent with genuine ancient Egyptian writing. The story relies entirely on second-hand reports and alleged reconstructions. Some suspect that Hieroglyphics or others may have embellished or fabricated the translation. Assuming this story has any truth, natural phenomena such as meteor showers, solar halos, or comets could fit the vague descriptions of what the ancient Egyptians saw, documented, and couldn't quite explain. The Tulli Papyrus is a fascinating mystery, but not widely accepted as solid evidence of ancient UFOs due to the missing original document, questionable provenance, and potential for misinterpretation or forgery. Let's look at one more ancient Egyptian example, this time in the form of hieroglyphics, the writings found on tombs and other important sites. On a ceiling beam at the Temple of Seti I, Abydos, you can see a set of hieroglyphs that, to modern eyes, look startlingly like a helicopter, a tank, a submarine, or even a spaceship. Well, there it is, the smoking gun. How could this be anything but ancient Egyptians recording what they see? Well, there is actually a logical explanation when we look at most credible Egyptology research. The strange shapes are the result of palimpsest carving, where older inscriptions were filled and recarved. In this case, The original hieroglyphs honoring Seti I were later overwritten with text for Ramses II, and the plaster eroded, revealing a layered image that looks technological. And anything that may look like a modern machine is just a result of pareidolia, the tendency to perceive familiar patterns, like the vehicles in question, where none were intended. There are other examples in question. Occasionally, Egyptian art depicts beings with elongated skulls, such as Akhenaten and his family. They appear to have unusual eyes or heads and look like human-animal hybrids. Those who study this ancient culture speculate these are symbolic or religious figures, not literal aliens. The stylization was simply meant to show divinity or the metaphysical nature of gods. Now, if you ask an alien theorist, Akhenaten's unique body shape and elongated head points to a possible extraterrestrial hybrid or alien emissary. Essentially anything that appears godlike, typically with an animal head, may have been a space alien visiting an older Earth. But seriously, it was probably just religious stuff. Moving on. Did other historic societies record any UFO sightings during their times? Why, yes they did. Ancient sightings from Babylonia, Rome, and China do come up in discussion on the matter. Let's go through some notable cases by civilization. Let's talk briefly about the Babylonian records. In what is called the Akkadian and Babylonian omens, 22,000 to 600 BCE, ancient Mesopotamian scribes recorded unusual celestial phenomena as omens. The Enuma Anu Enlil, a famous series of clay tablets, catalogs hundreds of astronomical events. While most are clearly astronomical, eclipses, comets, some describe bright wheels or shining disks that are harder to classify. Here is a paraphrased example. If a circular object flashes in the sky like lightning and does not move with the stars, bad omen for the king. While these may refer to comets or meteors, some ufologists suggest certain descriptions resemble unexplained aerial phenomena. Looking at Roman records, Livy's Ab Urbe Condita, written in 218 BCE, the Roman historian Livy reported, "At Arpi, round shields were seen in the sky." The Latin term parmas, shields, has been interpreted by some as resembling flying saucers. Reading Pliny the Elder, Natural History, written 1st century CE, there are various descriptions of celestial phenomena. Quoting, "A spark fell from a star and grew as it descended to Earth, becoming as large as the moon." Again, possibly a meteor, but the description has elements that resemble UFO reports. Julius Obsequens, a Roman writer who was chilling out and doing writer stuff in the 4th to 5th century CE, compiled numerous Roman-era prodigies or strange omens. Here's an example. In 100 BCE, a globe of fire was seen moving across the sky at sunset. These reports, while often interpreted as comets or natural omens, contain descriptions of globes, torches, and flying shields that resonate with modern UFO narratives. We're not done yet. The Chinese had some things to say on UFOs as well. China has perhaps the richest ancient tradition of unusual aerial phenomena. Looking at the Bamboo Annals and Official Court Chronicles, we can pick out 3 encounters from 3 different dynasties. During the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE to 220 CE, official reported long, dragon-like objects that shone brightly in the night sky, moving against the wind. Dragons in Chinese mythology were sometimes descriptions of aerial or meteorological phenomena. The Song Dynasty, 960 to 1279 CE, has a famous entry describes a large star that appeared and hovered for many days. It sometimes expanded and contracted in brightness and moved irregularly. Witnesses during the Ming Dynasty, 1523 CE, reported a bright, rotating wheel in the sky at night that made no sound. This rotating, silent phenomenon is similar to some modern UFO sightings. Once again, experts have explained these incidents to be the result of celestial phenomena, such as comets, auroras, novas, or in combination with differing weather. But some do also admit some events are harder to explain than others. Before moving to more modern records, let's take a look at some documentation that survived from medieval Europe. During this era, Christianity very much influenced writings and art. Some of the more famous examples of what could be UFOs appear in Christian-inspired art. Since this belief was steeped in the supernatural, like the ancient Egyptians, what we may be seeing in these paintings is more than likely depicting divinity or some sort of awesome superpower one would only get when they reach level 70 in the hottest RPG that's dominating attention spans at the time. Let's take a look at some examples. Madonna with Saint Giovannino, Florence, Italy, 15th century. Here you can clearly see the small disc-shaped object in the sky behind Mary, with a man and dog gazing upward. Is it a UFO? An alien visitor? Or just artist interpretation of the divinity at hand? The Crucifixion of Christ, Visoki Dechani Monastery, Kosovo, 1350. On either side of Christ, you see two unusual objects, shaped like pods or capsules, each containing human-like figures. Alien visitors? If you ask me, this is the artist telling us to look out for spaceships in the afterlife. I mean, heaven seems open and wide. Makes sense to use rocket ships to get from point A to B. The Baptism of Christ, Et de Gelder, 1710, Fitzwilliam Museum, Cambridge. Above the scene, a disc-shaped object emits beams of light directly downward. An alien spaceship? Or the heavens shining down their blessing? Annunciation with St. Emitius, Carlo Crivelli, 1486, National Gallery, London. You can see a circular opening or object in the sky, emitting a focused beam directly into Mary's home. Could this be a... Wait a minute. Zoom in. Those are clearly angels. Come on now. Moving on. The Miracle of the Snow, Marcellino da Panicale, 1428-1432. Here you can see a multitude of bright circular objects that many interpret as saucer-like formations. If you take a minute and look at this one, it appears the objects in the sky are smaller versions of the larger one. Maybe clouds? It is called Miracle of Snow. Perhaps it depicts the storm clouds moving in. Let's jump ahead a bit. The end of the 19th century brought what would probably be the first documented UFO sighting of what many consider the modern era of UFO discovery. What's notable about this is it came before the increase of interest in science fiction that occurred in the 1940s, which we will get into soon. The sightings took place in the United States, mostly in the Midwest and California, between 1896 and 1897. During the first sighting, the Sacramento Bee and San Francisco Call published extensive eyewitness accounts describing a large, cigar-shaped object with brilliant lights flying slowly over the city. It emitted a humming or whirring sound and carried a bright searchlight. Multiple observers saw it move against the wind and hover. Some even claimed to hear human voices coming from the craft. Over the next few months, similar sightings were reported in San Francisco, California, Omaha, Nebraska, Kansas City, Kansas, Chicago, Illinois, and St. Louis, Missouri. Accounts of this remain surprisingly consistent, such as descriptions of winged airships or cigar-shaped craft, bright searchlights or multiple-colored lights, silent hovering or quick movements. Some claim to see occupants inside, described as human-like or mysterious aviators. In 1897, sightings peaked in Texas, with waves reported in Fort Worth, Dallas, and Aurora. The most famous incident came April 17th in Aurora, when it was reported a mystery airship allegedly crashed into a windmill on a farm. The disfigured body of a small, non-human being was said to be recovered and buried in the local cemetery. But the body was never recovered, even with modern excavations revealing no evidence. Regarding evidence, perhaps the most compelling part of the story is a small headstone believed to mark the alien grave once stood in the Aurora Cemetery, with a carving of a flying disc. In the 1970s, it mysteriously disappeared, and the Texas Historical Commission confirmed it was stolen. No known photographs exist of the inscription, but several people claim to have seen it before it vanished. The Cemetery Association refused further excavation, citing disturbance of graves. The story appeared in the Dallas Morning News and is probably the most credible evidence for the event happening, but the motivation beyond why the article was written is debated. It's still a famous case in UFO folklore. A fun tale for the community, but widely seen as a fabrication. Although you can see why it would spark the curiosity and imagination in ufologists. The UFO implications about these sightings are obvious. What is being described goes way beyond the aviation technology of the time. It was widespread, and reporting was pretty consistent with supposed eyewitness accounts. But how do historians and other researchers explain these incidents? This is generally broken down into 3 points. First, mass misidentification. People genuinely saw something but misunderstood what it was, due to limited technology, lack of aviation experience, and social expectations. This fits because no one had seen an airplane before. Wright brothers wouldn't fly until 1903. So any light in the sky could seem incredible. Descriptions were often vague or exaggerated, using language like a cigar-shaped craft with wings and brilliant lights. What could this possibly be? Perhaps stars and planets. Venus was bright during parts of this period. Fire balloons or early dirigibles, searchlights or lighthouse beams reflected on clouds, flocks of birds or dust devils catching lantern light. Second, sensationalist news was a huge thing at the time. Some of the newspaper reports, especially those with wild claims, may have been intentionally fabricated or embellished to sell papers. The Dallas Morning News article about the Aurora Crash, for example, appeared during a decline in the town's fortunes, and some locals suggest it was a publicity stunt. Also, many accounts come from anonymous sources or single correspondents reporting dozens of similar sightings. The third point UFO skeptics point to is mass hysteria and cultural suggestibility. Widespread public anxiety, mixed with imagination and rumor, can cause entire communities to interpret ordinary events in extraordinary ways. Here's a little social context of the 1890s to consider. Technology was improving, with electricity, telegrams, and industrialization taking off. Anxiety was inflamed through war, immigration, and industrial accidents. There was also a popular interest in invention and pseudoscience during this time, with Nikola Tesla and Jules Verne being very influential as an example. Basically, once a few newspapers published airship stories, people began expecting to see airships. This led to confirmation bias, seeing lights and interpreting them as craft. The 1896 through 97 wave set the tone for future UFO sightings, long before Roswell or sci-fi movies. It demonstrates how social psychology, media, and technology shape public perception of the unknown. It also shows how difficult it is, even today, to separate actual phenomena from cultural and cognitive influences. Moving on, the early 20th century, roughly 1900 to 1947, offers a fascinating and often overlooked period in UFO history. These decades contain a transition between folklore and modern aviation, and a growing number of documented, credible UFO sightings, even before the modern era began. We will examine some of the more notable sightings of the time. In 1909, the now famous airship scare affected 3 countries: the United Kingdom, New Zealand, and the United States. Descriptions also seem similar to those reported in the late 19th century in the United States. Citing newspaper articles at the time, in the UK, the Western Mail described a cigar-shaped object with lights flying silently at night, while the Times reported that police and farmers near Dover saw a brightly illuminated machine. These articles were all published in May of 1909. In August of the same year, in New Zealand, the Otago Daily Times reported people describing blinking lights, slow movement, and hovering behavior, not typical of meteors or balloons. Although more famously occurring in 1896 to 1897 in the United States. There was a resurgence in 1909-1910 of airship reports, particularly in the Midwest and California. Newspapers of the time reflected both awe and skepticism. Some speculated on German spies or secret inventors. Others framed the sightings as hoaxes or hysteria. Modern researchers point to talking points we've heard before: celestial bodies, surface lights reflecting in clouds, balloon experiments, and of course, the loop of confirmation bias. Looking at the other side, UFO researchers argue that at least some of the 1909 sightings, especially those involving low-altitude, hovering or maneuvering craft seen by multiple observers, are not easily explained. They point to structured craft described in detail, such as the cigar-shaped crafts with fins and searchlights. No engine noise, and movement against the wind is inconsistent with balloons. Reports made across geographically distant locations, sometimes days apart, with similar craft descriptions. and no human aircraft in 1909 capable of hovering silently with lights and traveling great distances overnight. While you consider if UFOs were seen in 1909, let's move forward in time. The years leading up to what we consider the modern era of UFO research was quite rich with documented sightings. Let's take a look at some of the more notable events. On February 9, 1913, a series of unexplained luminous objects were observed crossing the sky from Canada to Brazil. Thousands witnessed the event, including scientists, ship crews, and civilians. It was widely documented in newspapers, including The Times, London. Described as a procession of glowing objects moving horizontally and slowly across the sky in a linear formation, unlike normal meteors which streak across rapidly. Witnesses described it as a string of fireballs moving in silence, sometimes lasting several minutes. Now, up to this point, the evidence of UFOs we've discussed in this video does seem a bit suspect, with experts being able to refute extraterrestrial claims with sound research. However, modern explanations fall a little bit flat with this one. The most probable explanation comes from Dr. C.A. Chant, 1913, and modern researchers. They claim the objects were likely Earth-grazing meteoroids, a rare event where a meteor enters Earth's upper atmosphere at a very shallow angle, skims along, and either re-enters space or burns up slowly over an extended path. Dr. Chant, University of Toronto, gathered 100-plus eyewitness reports and concluded this was not a standard meteor shower, but an extraordinarily rare form of celestial procession. Later researchers, like Richard K. Norton, have proposed that the meteoroid fragmented in orbit, resulting in a string of smaller objects. Basically, these fragments entered the atmosphere together in formation. While the Earth-grazer theory is the most accepted, problems remain. For instance, Earth-grazers are usually isolated objects, not multiple, evenly spaced fragments. The slow speed, horizontal motion, and long duration are still hard to fully reconcile with known meteor physics. The event has never repeated with the same characteristics since. So, while the explanation could be true, not everything is understood. Score 1 for the ufologists? I'll let you decide. Let's keep going. During World War I, which occurred 1914 to 1918, several accounts of UFOs were documented on both sides. These are surprisingly consistent and, like the 1913 event, are harder to explain. During the Western Front in France, Belgium, soldiers on both sides frequently reported white or red lights hovering above trenches, slow-moving dark shapes passing overhead, and lights that blinked or searched the ground. These objects often remained completely silent and were not fired upon due to fear of hitting friendly aircraft or simple confusion. British soldiers near Ypres reported a dark object like a bus with no wings gliding silently overhead with a single red light. German and Austro-Hungarian troops reported floating stars, objects moving against the wind, apparent aerial surveillance with no engine noise. Both the British and German high commands suspected the other side had developed secret airships or spy aircraft. No such craft were ever confirmed. After the war, intelligence agencies compared notes. Neither side had any aircraft matching those descriptions. Theories at the time, keeping in mind aviation tech was primitive, were wide-ranging. Some claimed it was enemy reconnaissance balloons, But these were large, visible, and slow, and could not operate at night without being obvious targets. Perhaps it was experimental aircraft. Highly unlikely. Neither side had silent, night-capable machines in 1915 to 1918. Celestial misidentification? Possibly bright stars, planets, or atmospheric effects, but this doesn't explain motion or low altitude. Maybe it was simply spiritual interpretations? Some soldiers believed they were seeing omens or angelic lights, especially in cases tied to religious experiences or death. Looking through this event with a modern lens, it's still hard to fully explain. Some say it could be a misidentification of stars or flares. While this is possible, it doesn't explain the hovering or directional movement. It could be psychological effects of war due to stress, fear, and other heightened emotions, but multiple witness sightings weaken this. If it actually was experimental tech, no evidence was found in post-war archives. These World War I sightings represent one of the earliest large-scale sets of military reports of unknown craft. There was no sci-fi culture, no aliens in the public imagination, so descriptions were raw and based on direct perception. And it shows that strange aerial phenomena occurred well before the flying saucer era began in 1947. Is this all based on a blend of misperception, primitive aviation, and wartime confusion? Or actual early, genuine encounters with UAPs, documented before cultural contamination? We may never truly be able to prove it either way. It seems as we move more into the modern era, these claims become harder to refute. You'd think as we get closer to the present, the opposite would be true due to all the ways we can document and analyze data. Let's see if this trend continues. Between 1920 and 1933, in Sweden, Norway, and Finland, mysterious phantom airplanes flew over the northern forests. This was described as dark shapes with searchlights and no engine noise. They appeared in bad weather, often defying wind direction. The Swedish military investigated multiple cases, but no craft or country was ever identified. Once again, the typical explanations, such as celestial activity, experimental tech, or cultural contamination, are cited. But they all have issues fully explaining what actually happened. On June 13, 1933, near Magenta, in the Lombardy region of northern Italy, according to Roberto Pinotti, an Italian UFO researcher and founder of CUN, Centro Ufologico Nazionale, an unknown aerial vehicle crashed near Magenta during Mussolini's regime. Allegedly, it was a metallic disc-shaped craft, described as smooth and silver, roughly 10 to 15 meters in diameter, and lacking any identifiable propulsion. The Italian military allegedly retrieved it, then transported it to a secret facility near Varese, possibly in hangars connected to the SIAI Marchetti Aircraft Company. This alleged event came to light in the early 2000s. Roberto Pinotti and others received anonymous documents, now known as the Fascist UFO files, from a source identified only as Mr. X. While the presented text does appear to be genuinely from Mussolini's regime, the documents were copies. The original source has not been found. And who Mr. X is anyone's guess. So this one is more than likely a hoax. Without having the original documents, no Italian state archive confirming its authenticity, plus no physical evidence at all from the craft, it's easier to dismiss this one. Going further into the future, in 1933 in Sweden, documented reports of silent triangular airplanes over forests near the Norwegian border. No military aircraft in the region matched the performance or size, and multiple sightings reported to the government. In 1936, in New York, reports of a huge, dark, wingless object shaped like a flattened triangle or manta ray were reported. Witnesses described a humming sound, a red light at the front, and white lights on the wings. No aircraft at the time, not even military prototypes, matched this description. In 1938 in Germany came reports of large, triangular-shaped aircraft flying over rural Bavaria. At first assumed to be experimental Luftwaffe aircraft, but no record exists of such craft during that year. In 1939, on the UK coast, there were several reports of triangular objects described over the English Channel. They were described as black planes with no wings or tail, moving unusually slowly. So, what the heck was this now? Early experimental aircraft? Zeppelins or balloons? Misidentified aircraft or optical illusions? Or maybe it was the Vulcans from Star Trek missing first contact by over 100 years. Once again, the go-to explanations can cover some of what was reported, but not all of it. In the spring of 1941, another fascinating tale of UFO discovery was revealed. According to Charlotte Mann in the late 1990s, the granddaughter of the man who told the tale, a flying disc crashed outside Cape Girardeau in a rural area, late at night or early morning. Reverend William Huffman, her grandfather, was called by local police or fire personnel to deliver last rites at the crash site. Upon arrival, Huffman allegedly saw a crashed metallic disc about 25 to 30 feet across, 3 small non-human bodies, one or more already dead, and military personnel already present securing the area. Huffman was instructed to remain silent, but told his family, including his wife and sons, what he had seen. While a photo was claimed to be taken of one of the crash victims, it was never discovered. And given how the information was allegedly handed over through a family, this whole story is really nothing but hearsay. The only thing that really grabs UFOologists' attention is how it reflects the story of Roswell 6 years later, which is the most famous UFO crash site. It also suggests the government was dealing with crash sites even before World War II, assuming the story is real. Moving on to the 1942 Battle of Los Angeles, occurring February 25th between 2 and 4 a.m., this alleged encounter was probably a little bit too close for those who witnessed it. Just 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, American nerves were on edge. Japanese submarines had recently shelled oil installations near Santa Barbara. A full-scale invasion was feared. So, when unidentified aerial objects were spotted in the skies over Los Angeles, the military acted fast and with overwhelming force. At approximately 2:25 a.m., air raid sirens were sounded across Los Angeles County. The entire city was ordered into blackout mode. At 3:16 a.m., anti-aircraft batteries opened fire. Over 1,400 shells were fired over the next hour. Searchlights crisscrossed the sky, locking onto a glowing or reflective object, or objects, that appeared to hover above the city. Thousands of civilians witnessed the event from rooftops, windows, and shelters. Descriptions included a large, slow-moving object gliding silently over the city, multiple smaller objects or groups of glowing lights, objects as disc-like, oval, or egg-shaped. No visible signs of damage from anti-aircraft fire, no bombs were dropped, and no aircraft wreckage was recovered. Mainstream historians lean toward a combination of radar echoes like temperature inversion or birds, a weather balloon that was targeted by mistake, and of course, mass panic fueled by tension post-Pearl Harbor. UFO researchers note that the object resisted intense firepower, was seen by thousands, and matches the performance characteristics of modern UAPs, hovering, no sound, invulnerable to fire. Even with the pictures being enhanced at the time to help with clarity in printing, such as the brightness of the searchlights being made to look more vibrant, the image is striking and hard to explain, as the above historian explanations do have some holes. Now on to 1946, what was coined the ghost rocket wave. It was a phenomenon in Sweden and surrounding Scandinavian countries, one of the most well-documented, military-investigated, and radar-confirmed UFO events before the modern UFO era began with Roswell in 1947. This case is extraordinary, not only because of its scale and military response, but also because of its complete lack of conventional explanation. No missiles, no aircraft, and no debris, despite hundreds of incidents, radar confirmation, and physical impact reports. Reports included some familiar descriptors such as cigar-shaped or rocket-like objects, often with no visible wings or tail. Some had flashing or glowing lights. Many moved at high speed, often noiselessly. Some hovered or maneuvered in unnatural ways. They were frequently reported to crash into lakes with no wreckage recovered, even through contemporary and modern diving ventures. In dozens of cases, Swedish and Finnish military radar stations picked up fast-moving, solid targets. These objects often entered Swedish airspace from the Soviet Union's direction, but moved far too fast and erratically for conventional aircraft, and often performed maneuvers beyond any known missile or plane. The Swedish Defense Staff launched a formal investigation led by top military officers. Their internal conclusion, unpublished at the time, was that most sightings cannot be explained as natural phenomena, aircraft or meteors. Sweden also asked for assistance from British and U.S. military attachés. The U.S. took the ghost rockets very seriously. Officials feared the rockets might be captured German V-1 or V-2 tech being tested by the Soviets, or worse, entirely unknown technology. A 1946 U.S. Army Air Force's intelligence report states, "There is no evidence to suggest these are meteorological or astronomical in origin. The characteristics resemble guided missiles." No known German, Soviet, or Allied missile at the time matched the ghost rocket flight behavior, particularly hovering, U-turns, or submerged entries into water without a splash. The Swedish government noted, "There is no doubt that there are objects flying around which are shaped like rockets. They are apparently guided. No Swedish aircraft could have made such maneuvers. Their purpose and origin are unknown." Again, a very familiar pattern of numerous eyewitnesses, but this time with military and government verification that something was there, yet no physical evidence could ever be recovered to officially prove it. Just what the heck is it with humans throughout history seeing cigar-shaped objects in the sky? Maybe as we go further, we will find the answer. Before moving on to the Roswell incident, let's briefly touch on the sightings during World War II. Like the First World War, soldiers in all positions on both sides reported seeing cigar-shaped or rocket-like objects, often with no visible wings or tail. Some had flashing or glowing lights, and many moved at high speed, often noiselessly. Some hovered or maneuvered in unnatural ways, and frequent reports of crashes into lakes with no wreckage recovered was made. These objects were coined Foo Fighters by United States personnel at the time, and that name has stuck since, appearing in pop culture since World War II. Other reports include fireballs chasing aircraft, objects with red lights hovering above aircraft, and silver balls rising from the ocean and passing military air vehicles with no sound. As you probably suspect by now, the usual explanations are used, but overall the encounters remain a mystery, with post-war archives showing no side had such crafts or tech employed. Time to talk about the big one, Roswell. During the 7th and 8th of July in 1947, Mac Brazel, a rancher near Corona, New Mexico, discovered unusual debris scattered across his property. He described metallic strips, rubber-like material, lightweight beams that were impossibly strong, and strange symbols resembling hieroglyphics. The Roswell Army Airfield, RAAF, issued a press release stating, "The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence office of the 509th Bomb Group was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc." Newspapers ran it with headlines like, "RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region." This was the first and last time the U.S. military ever used the term flying disc in an official press release. Just 24 hours later, on July 9th, Brigadier General Roger Ramey in Fort Worth, Texas, held a press conference. He claimed it was just a weather balloon. Photographs were taken showing balloon debris on the floor, allegedly what Brazel had found. Brazel was reportedly held for questioning for several days and later gave a more subdued statement. UFO researcher Stanton Friedman interviewed Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer who originally handled the debris. Marcel claimed, "It was no weather balloon. It was not of this earth." This reignited public interest. Books like The Roswell Incident in 1980 and Crash at Corona in 1992 popularized the theory that the object was an alien spacecraft. Bodies were recovered. The U.S. government conducted a massive cover-up. Multiple whistleblowers and second-hand witnesses later claimed 4 or 5 small humanoid bodies were found near the crash site. They were described as 3 to 4 feet tall, having large heads, small mouths, no ears, and grayish skin. They were allegedly transported to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, or Area 51. Then in 1994, under pressure from public inquiries and FOIA requests, the U.S. Air Force released 2 reports. The first, the Roswell Report, Fact versus Fiction, explained the crash as part of Project Mogul, a top-secret operation to detect Soviet nuclear tests using high-altitude balloon arrays, which could be a plausible explanation. However, the Roswell Report, Case Closed in 1997, claimed the bodies, people remembered, were likely test dummies dropped from high altitudes during the 1950s. The problem with this explanation is the documented dummy drops in question happened years after 1947, creating more skepticism than resolution. Adding more fuel to the UFO fire, in 1995, a British film producer released the infamous alien autopsy video, claiming to show a body from Roswell. It was later admitted to be a recreation, though the producer insisted it was based on real footage he once saw. It goes without saying, the Roswell incident shaped the modern UFO narrative. Crashed saucers, alien bodies, government cover-up. This led to the creation of Majestic 12, Area 51 lore, and inspired thousands of books, films, and conspiracies. It also sparked the U.S. government's own renewed interest in UAPs, as seen in recent congressional hearings. In 1947, the same year as Roswell, near Mount Rainier in Washington, pilot Kenneth Arnold reported flying saucers zooming at uncanny speed, coining the term flying saucer. It must also be noted, during the Roswell incident, science fiction stories were taking off in the public consciousness. Were people seeing flying saucers because that's what popular media was showcasing at the time? Kind of like how in the late 1800s and early 1900s, the objects were referred to as airships due to the technology and culture of the time. Just something to keep in mind as we look over some incidents leading up to the present. We're going to run through the next few listings rather quickly because, like Roswell, the rabbit hole runs deep, but we will try to be concise. In the 1950s and 1960s, sightings soared near military/nuclear sites, Colorado, Hanford, Washington, and UK nuclear bases. Many remain unexplained despite government study. Skeptics often point to misidentified conventional aircraft or balloon tests. A police officer witnessed a saucer-shaped craft with two humanoid figures near Socorro, New Mexico in 1964. Investigated by Project Blue Book, this incident remains unexplained and highly credible. In 1973, a U.S. Army Reserve helicopter crew reported a 100-foot-long cylindrical craft hovering over their helicopter, consistent with military UAP encounters. In 1978, multiple aircrew and radar tracked a large orb with flashing lights alongside an aircraft at 21,000 feet. The New Zealand military investigated with no conclusive explanation. Britain's Roswell occurred in 1980 at Rendlesham Forest, UK, when U.S. airmen witnessed glowing lights and recorded radiation near RAF Woodbridge. Lieutenant Colonel Halt documented the event. Skeptics cite lighthouse reflections, but the case remains a mystery. Known as the Hudson Valley Lights in 1983 and 4 in New York and Connecticut, massive boomerang formations of colored lights, witnessed by hundreds and documented by researchers like J. Allen Hynek, likely explained as prank light-equipped Cessnas, though hard correlations remain. The Zimbabwe school sightings in 1994 involved over 60 students reported humanoid beings and craft hovering close to the school. Highly disturbing, with no consensus explanation, though skeptics point to psychosocial factors. In 2004 and 2015, we had the U.S. Navy Tic Tac and gimbal encounters, where fighter jets from USS Nimitz tracked and recorded fast, agile oval and disc-like craft. Official videos released in 2017. These remain unexplained and sparked the Pentagon's UAP initiative. In 2008, in Stephenville, Texas, multiple witnesses, including pilots, reported a massive silent craft chased by fighter jets. Despite military dismissals, the case remains unresolved. And as recently as May 22, 2025, a UAP collided with an airliner in the middle of the air during cruising altitude. Data is still being evaluated. There is so much more that we could cover, and each incident could be its own full-length video. But the goal here was to go over notable, documented UFO sightings in human history. But to be quite honest, after going through all this, I think I have more questions than answers. And that brings us to the end of our historical romp through documented UFO history. So, did we answer the question if alien UFOs are a real thing? Or just a bunch of coincidental reports stemming from a series of celestial and weather events and public perception based on cultural beliefs and technology? Some reports are easier to dismiss than others, but one thing is for certain. What is up there has confounded cultures for a very long time. Even if what these ancient cultures saw weren't alien visitors, they were curious and always looking, pondering. UFO stories have had an undeniable effect on our modern culture, and as our world continues to connect through technology, share verified data, and get better at taking pictures and video, maybe someday we will find concrete evidence that points one way or another. Until then, this has been Historical History. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.